Hi, Junior. You are one of house music's most prolific DJs with your huge back catalogue that not only spans across genres and generations, but also the scene's most iconic labels and artists. You've worked with dance music legends like Daft Punk and Armand van Helden. You can count yourself amongst the legendary status of those guys as well as you continue to push the scene forwards, having released even a brand new album this year in 2024. It's an absolute pleasure, Junior Sanchez, to welcome you to the House Culture Podcast.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for those kind words. I don't take them lightly at all, and I really appreciate. I appreciate the words that were spoken there. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
no, you're welcome. You deserve it. So let's rewind. We always want to start at the beginning and find out, you grew up in New Jersey. What was it like kind of growing up there? And, how did you discover music when you were young?
I, I grew up in Jersey, as you mentioned, mostly Newark, New Jersey, or in down we say the Ironbound section of New Jersey, which is more. It was Italian, Portuguese, Brazilian, I guess a little Irish, kind of enclave of Newark
Hmm.
that I grew up in. And I grew up in a very musical family. My mother's Brazilian and Italian. She would play always in the house Latin music, Brazilian music, bossa nova, artists like Gami Silva or Martinho da Vila, like all this stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm the youngest of six.
Oh, wow.
My oldest sister, and I have all my brothers, and I'm the youngest of them. So they all had their own palettes or their styles of genres of music they were into. And the format that they bought music in at the time was on vinyl.
Hmm.
And they weren't DJs. That was just the format they bought in because
Yeah.
everyone listened to records. And by the time they left the house, they didn't really take their vinyl with them. They just kind of left it. And I started to, accumulate a pretty broad palette of music. One of my brothers was into like the Smiths, and my sister was into like ELO. My other brother was
Yeah.
into like Depeche Mode or KMFDM or Ministry. And my other brother was into like hip hop, like Slick Rick and Run
Wow.
DMC.
Yeah.
So all this stuff was around,
Mm.
and I just digested it all, and I understood taste and good
Yeah.
music, I
Yeah.
guess, because I don't recall any one of my brothers having really bad taste in music. I mean, one of my brothers, Michael, he was really into freestyle or early electro, let's say,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Bambaataa or Shannon, Let the Music Play,
Yeah.
Joy Sims, All in All,
Hmm.
and I grew up in that time as
Yeah.
well. Well, I grew up as a child vicariously living through their music.
Yeah.
So by the time they winded up leaving home, I just had a pretty interesting record collection
Mm.
myself that
Yeah.
I inherited. And then from there, I would walk to school, and I discovered there was an old profile. Profile Records had a compilation called The Best of House Music Volume 1 or something.
Yeah.
And I must have been, I think about this, I must have been third grade or fourth grade, like young, listening
Yeah.
to this, walking to school
Yeah.
and listening to like Black Riot,
Yeah.
Todd's Black
Hmm.
Riot, A Day in the Life.
Hmm.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun,
Yep.
dun. And like listening to that and going, wow. Or
Yeah.
Tyree Acid Crash. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is mine. Like I felt like this was everything that my brother and my sisters exposed me to was theirs.
Yeah.
And when I heard house music, I felt it was like this was mine. Like I claimed it as my own.
Completely new. Yeah. To you as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to me, yeah.
Mm. Hmm.
And that was the bug that got
Yeah.
me into loving house music outside of already loving music as in general.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, like 9, 10, 11, I just by the time I was 11 years old, that's when I kind of started to DJ.
No
So and
way. Wow. That young.
yeah,
So, I mean, even
yeah.
at that age, like in terms of trying to DJ, like where was the equipment coming from and where was like the inspiration? Because there's no YouTube or anything in terms of I can understand what a
No.
DJ does. Like, where was all that coming from?
So it started off loving the music and
Hmm.
then knowing going to New York and jumping on trains and hanging out. And there was a dance culture. Everyone would dance in front
Mm.
of like the record stores or Antique Boutique, Vinyl Mania. But when I was 11 years old, my brother came to visit with his then now his wife now, but then his girlfriend,
Mm.
and to introduce him to my mom and her brother-in-law's brother. I'll make it simple. Her brother-in-law's brother was making music,
Mm.
and he at that time. So this is 1988. I
Yeah.
was 11, I think, and he went by the name of Jose Chinga, but his name is Tony Rodriguez, Brothers Vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he had this record called, it's really funny for me to repeat this, but it was a big freestyle record called Fly Tetas, and it was about titties and stuff. And it was big within that scene.
Yeah.
I knew what it was. We all knew what it was, because it was kind of like he was like mimicking a Scarface's voice, and it was like a freestyle beat.
Yeah.
And it's like you got to hear it. You got to at some point you got to find this. It's called Jose Chinga Fly Tetas. Anyway, so she says to me, she sees a bunch of records on the floor. She goes, "Hey, you like music?" I'm like, "Absolutely." She goes, "Oh, well, my brother-in-law's brother is X, Y, and Z." I was like, "What?" I was like, "No way!" And I knew the record, and he went on to do like Joey Kidd, Everything I Own, all these freestyle records, because that's what Todd Terry comes from. Todd Terry comes from freestyle. Fascination, Louis Vega did Information Society, Running.
Yeah.
So I was like blown away. I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" And so my brother, before they got married, lived with her brother-in-law in his basement before they got married and got their own house together and stuff. And that's where the studio was of that guy. So they asked me, "Oh, do you want to stay over?" And they lived in another town called Irvington, New Jersey. And I would ask my mom, "Can I stay over there for the weekend?" She goes, "You can if you go to church on Sundays," because I was doing CCD. I was like doing my communion and stuff.
Yeah.
So I would go, and I would stay there the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and I would go to the basement. It was the first time I saw a studio. There was all these lights and stuff. And this guy, I'm 11 years old, and he didn't treat me as a kid. He knew, obviously, my brother was sleeping in another room, and it would be like 2, 3 in the morning. I'll still be up watching him work and being very quiet and not interrupting him. And he would ask my brother, "Hey, I'm going to go to the diner. Can I take your little brother?" And he'd be like, "Sure." And I would walk with him, and he sat with me and talked to me about music. And lo and behold, he's making all these weird, funny, kind of explicit freestyle records, and his dad is a pastor. It's just really wild.
Yeah.
So I got the bug from him. He gave me my first real creative curated records from him, not the ones my brothers left. He just went through his doubles and stuff and said, here you go, and gave me a bunch of records. I mimicked him. Like, I went on, tried to find the cologne he was wearing. I think it was called Quorum. You know, it was just like he was my first like real mentor. Then I did that for maybe 11, 12, like first 2 years, you know. Then by the time I was 13, he was already doing his thing. I don't know, he was touring, or I don't know what he was working a lot. And I started to get a little older, get more hanging out with my friends, but never lost the bug of music. But I started to get older, 12, 13. I was hanging out more with my friends, so I didn't really go over there. So I started to DJ around that time, 11, 12, 13. I would put two of my mother had an old school 8-track player with the turntable, and then she had a really fancy turntable player that we wouldn't touch. It was like two different setups. So I would bring them both together and like volume up one, volume down another. So I was kind of fake mixing, you know, with two different stereo systems.
Amazing.
You know, no pitches, just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
That was how I got started into like the DJing. Then around 12, 13, I had met a girl and her family. She was a Jewish Italian family, super sweet. And I would always hang out there, and they saw that I loved music. And they bought me my first Techniques turntable for one Christmas morning, I remember. And they knew I loved music, and they can see the passion in me.
Yeah.
And I cried. I remember I got this turntable. I was like, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I had this really shit realistic mixer or something, or pyramid mixer. And then I had another Techniques belt-driven turntable. So I had one really good turntable, and that's when I started learning to mix.
Yeah.
So this is about 13 years old. then I start playing. I go to New York and I start playing in nightclubs.
What, at that age, like that
That
young?
age, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that is
I was at
insane.
Limelight. All my friends were promoters. I always hung out with older people,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was never really. It's not that I look young. I
Mm,
just didn't hang around with young people, and I always find myself in situations where people were just kind of like, "Hey, yeah, come, just hang out."
yeah,
And then New York was never really carding you. You got to think about it. There was no bottle service. There was no. You kind of had to look the part. So if you walked into a club, even though I knew people, I knew like promoters, you
mm,
just had to look cool.
yeah,
There wasn't about. It's how you dress. I kind of like Berghain, like
yeah,
how it is now.
yeah.
Like meaning
Mm-hmm.
you just needed to look the part, and
Yeah,
if you looked the part, you got in. If
yeah.
you were confident and you were just a vibe, you got in.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah,
So I met people there, and I started playing in the shampoo room at Limelight and other small little rooms in different clubs. My
yeah.
first residency, I was about 16, was at Club USA in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But a guy approached me during that time of Limelight. I was about probably 13, 14 years old. And he's like, hey, can you make music like you're DJing? And I completely lied and said yes. And 'cause the only time I was in the studio was when I was around 11, 12 with
Yeah.
Tony,
Mm-hmm.
So he had a friend of mine, his name was David Lala, drive me to his studios in Dover, New Jersey. Like it was like really far. And I remember seeing like signs that said farm for sale and stuff. Or maybe I thought that, but it seemed far.
Yeah.
So I get there to his studio and I'm super inquisitive. I'm like, oh, what's that? What's that? How much was that? How much is this? And I see this console that I was really kind of like, it looks super familiar. I had felt this energy with. It was like weird. And he
Yeah.
told me, oh, I just bought this console off this guy named Tony Rodriguez, blah, 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 blah. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, that's my sister-in-law's
Yeah. Yeah.
brother-in-law's brother. I'm
Yeah.
like, wait a minute. So I sat back and I thought to myself, this is the same console I saw when I was 11 years old. I'm about to
Oh,
make my first
wow.
track on
Yeah.
the same console that I saw when I was 11.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, if this is not serendipitous, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe this means something because
Yeah.
I was always taking things as a sign,
Mm-hmm.
or that's when I learned. That was like my first real like moment of like, wow, this is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
interesting and cool. And I wind up making my first track with the first mixing board I ever saw, console, when I was
Wow.
11.
Yeah.
And that's when the bug started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
For making records.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
and it just didn't stop from there. That's when I took everything seriously, and I would be in high school and ask the bus driver to please, on the route to home to, if he passed the train station, can I get out?
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to jump on a train and go to New York before the labels closed,
Yeah.
So, which she wasn't supposed to do, but somehow I managed to get adult people to like me enough. And
Yeah.
like, okay, kid, we'll do this for you. So I would get on the train and go to New York, and I'll go because all the record labels had the addresses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you would read, 550 West Broadway. That was Strictly Rhythm or
Mm-hmm.
Nervous. So I would go to the offices, sit in their foyer, open a door, sit down, and wait till somebody acknowledged me.
Wow.
And there'll be somebody in the window like, oh, you're still here, kid? What do you want? And I'm like, oh, I play here. I just need a record. It's like, here, get out of here, go. And I would just keep doing it. I would watch like Todd Terry walk in, Louis walk in. I would just watch people because at that time the Strictly Rhythm offices were around the corner from the Winter Carton Theater.
Mm.
It was Barry G, Gladys Pizarro. I remember them all being the A&Rs. And I remember sitting there and it's a small foyer, and it said, this is Strictly Rhythm. And I would just sit there looking like a little raver kid, and everyone that I love just walked past me.
Yeah.
And I'm just
amazing.
like, holy shit. and then in the same building, I would calculate it. I'm like, all right, who else is in this building?
Yeah.
Oh, I take upstairs is City Sounds, and
Mm-hmm.
then Nervous is right around the corner, and like I would just kind of do the rounds, and then just be in people's faces
Yeah.
all the time.
And that's how you make it happen for yourself, just be, and
Yeah.
getting noticed and being familiar. And we have spoken to Gladys and Todd Terry on this podcast as well. And just like even Gladys's experience, her talking about, just the people that were coming into Strictly Rhythm all the time, Louis Todd and all those guys, just the revolving door. You must have seen it all, right?
Gladys is the godmother. Yeah. So, I
Mm.
mean, that's a story in itself,
Mm-hmm.
how I met Gladys, because I met Gladys through Armand. I met Armand. Wow. He wasn't even Armand Van Helden yet, technically. He had a label called Aviate
Mm-hmm.
Records, and he was DJing under that moniker, Aviate.
Yeah.
He was in Boston, and I remember at a rave, I met him at a rave. I was probably 14, 15, around that age. And I would take like logos, like, the Burger King logo,
Mm-hmm.
and I would make it say Disco King, and I would just go to raves and sell T-shirts.
Yeah.
And I think he might have a different recollection of this, but this is my recollection. I remember him playing and him liking the shirt. I gave him one,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "Hey man, I'm moving to New York. I don't really know a lot of kids. Here's here's my number." So he wrote his phone number, not a mobile phone. There was no mobile. It was like his actual landline number,
Mm-hmm.
or a landline number. Or maybe I gave him his because he was moving. Let me call you when I'm in New York. I said, cool.
Yeah.
And he did that. He moved to New York and he gave me a call.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, hey, which is pretty amazing. He called me. He's like, so yeah, I'll fast forward. So he called me. He goes, I'm having a party. I'll get together in my loft. He lived with two other people. John the Horse McMahon, who was working at Arista or something, radio, and the photographer's name was Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And Armand's room was in an old fur vault in the music building on 19th Street,
Mm-hmm.
where Rogue used to be, where Dennis Ferrer used to work.
Yeah.
And I remember going there with a bunch of my New Jersey pals, and it was a straight up loft party. Maybe there was drugs consumed. I wasn't doing anything at that time because all I did was drink. But I think there was a lot of shit going on because people were really emotional. So I remember walking in, and I went to Armand's room,
Mm-hmm.
and in his room was his baby's mother at the time. Her name was Dulce, and Roger and Armand, Roger Sanchez and Armand.
Mm-hmm.
And she's crying. And I walk in, I'm like, oh, did I interrupt anything or whatever? I think, this is all playing out in my head now. And he's like, no, it's all good. She's crying because she just found out that Roger made Love Dance. Like,
Yeah, Underground Solution.
So
Yeah.
she's just crying, and I'm just like, whoa, that's fucking awesome. And I'm overwhelmed. Like, that's like so cool.
Yeah.
And that was that. I met Roger there.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, briefly met Roger.
Yeah.
And I walk out, and that's where Armand kind of like put his hand on my shoulder or my head, and was like, hey, and he introduced me to people in the room, and one of them was Gladys.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, this is the kid. This is, it's the next kid, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, all right, come to my office on Monday and bring me some dats. And I was like, turn to Armand, like, what's a dat? What's a dat? What's a dat? And he was like, oh, I'll tell you later. So whatever, we partied. So next day,
just like, of course. Yeah, see you there.
Yeah, I said, yeah, see you there. I found out what a dat with digital audio tape. Turns out my friend Dave Lala, who drove me to the studio at that time, he was in high school, but now at this time he's probably in college. I'm obviously younger than him, and he was the musical director at a certain college in New Jersey. And he's like, oh, we got a bunch of those that nobody uses, DAT machines, like Panasonic 3700s, or he's like, he goes, just take one. I'm like, bought a screwdriver, took one. That was my first DAT machine.
Job done.
Job done. And then my first musical workstation was a Roland W30, what Armand used. So he taught me how to use that. Armand taught me how to use it in Armand's way. He wasn't the best teacher. He's just like, here. And he had a lot of rings, so all you hear was like, on the actual keyboard. And I would watch, I would pay attention, I would digest, pay attention. I
Hmm.
learned how to use this machine and learned how to sample. And it was two banks of 7.4 seconds each bank. So you're talking less than 17 seconds of sample time to make a song,
Yeah,
period.
it's nuts.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And it had 8 ins and 8 output. It had 8 outputs,
Hmm.
which is cool. But that's it. You had about 16, 17 seconds of sample time, and you had to make records
Yeah.
just with that.
Hmm.
And I did. And I went to see Gladys.
Hmm.
So my first 12-inch to Gladys for like 12 or $1,500. I can't
Hmm.
remember. And I remember looking at the check, going, I can do this like once a month,
Yeah. Yeah.
just like as a job. It
Hmm.
wasn't even like I'm gonna do this and become this or that.
Yeah.
That wasn't even in my thoughts.
Yeah.
Like we weren't thinking we're gonna like. This was like I enjoy doing this. This is what I really like to do, and this could be my job.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Hmm. How
That's
cool is that?
literally
Yeah.
that was like
The plan.
the plan, and it was like nothing else
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started, and never stopped from there. I had my first record out in 1994.
Wow.
I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, to go from, well, it's like you've had this career almost up until that point, but it's just everything's happened from like age 10 instead of like age 19 onwards. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's really living up to the junior in the Junior Sanchez name. It's
yeah,
yeah, like you say, and everyone, all of your contemporaries as well, that whole, people think of that sound and that scene and Strictly Rhythm and all of that, and they think of, Roger Sanchez and Louis Vega, and and they are a lot older than you are, because
yeah.
you're so young. You've been doing it from such a young age.
People forget that. Like, I think they lumped me in. I was like the last of the Mohicans, like
Hmm.
meaning I was probably the last one they accepted in. You got so Armand's 9 years my senior,
Yeah,
and then Roger's older than me. Sneak, so all of them are older.
yeah, yeah,
And I think because they let me. So how I officially met Roger and all of them,
hmm,
because they would see me out with Armand, but they really didn't talk to us much. Armand, they probably talked to more of me. They're like, "Who is this little kid?" And I was like super like raverish. Um, so Armand calls me. He's like, "Hey, I got invited to the movies to go see the Jerky Boys." It was like this prank call
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Um, and I don't want to go alone. Do you want to come with me? I'm
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, absolutely. Who's going?" He goes, "Oh, Louie, Kenny, India, Todd, Roger." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah,
So we go to the movies, and I'm sitting with Armand, and around us are everyone that we love,
yeah.
like
Wow.
all the people that we admired and
Hmm.
the people that we respected, and that's how I met Todd. That's how I met them, and I remember walking, excuse me, walking out of the movie theater with Armand, and then I'm talking to Roger, and he's like, "Hey, I'm working up the street at Base Hit.
Hmm.
Do you want to come? Do you want to hang out?" And I looked at Armand like he was like my dad. I was like, Can I go?" you know? And he was like, "Yeah, man, go." I go,
Hmm.
and I think Roger was doing a Byron Stingley remix
Hmm.
of Get Up, maybe Get Up, or I'm not really sure. I think it was Get Up.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's sampling all these sounds, and he's like sampling like a stap, like, and I'm like, "Oh, that's Tom Middleton with Jedi Knights."
Hmm.
And he's like I'm just clocking every sample
Yeah.
that he's doing, like
Yeah.
everything.
Hmm.
Like it go literally like like that. He's like, I'm like, that's from, that's, you know, one for MAW, Jedi Knights, Global Communications, double pack,
Yeah.
this, that, that. And he's just like, where are you from? You know, like,
Where did you? Yeah, what
yeah,
planet
where'd
did
you
you
come
land?
from?
Yeah.
And I was a baby at that time.
Mm.
So that's how me and Roger, struck a friendship. He's like, I, you know, I knew more that I always say I'm full of useless information because I just know shit that nobody cares about. And he was just like, took a real liking to me, and
Mm.
that's when Sneak was around, and Sneak were friends, and
Yeah.
so was Armand. And when he came up with the idea to do the S-Men
Yeah.
with Sneak,
hmm
I had no right to be a part of technically his thought process. He's like, "Yo, do you want to be down with this? Because I
Yeah.
think you're awesome." Like,
Yeah. That's
part of this
incredible.
new collective,
Yeah. And I
because
mean,
he wanted to do like a
yeah.
yeah,
And I want to talk about the S Men as well, particularly
yeah,
because that was, you don't really see that now. Like, I would love, a collective of like big hitters to get together and really kind of smash it. And obviously, you did it later on
yeah,
with the Mongoloids as well. But the S Men
yeah.
initially, so it's you, Roger, and Sneak, right?
Sneak, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it was Roger's idea because he was like, I remember I was sitting in his house on 19th Street, and he wanted to do something like Invisible Scratch Pickles, and then Sneak was around, and I'm a Sanchez, and my name is like Sneak Roger Sanchez. So it was like, let's do some S-Men. I was like, cool. And he's like, do you want to be down? I was like, cool. And they knew I can DJ,
yeah.
so they knew that they knew I can hold my own,
Mm.
and they knew I could hold my own musically in production, or I was getting there. But that was pretty cool because I did a remix. So we all did the S-Men back record, and I did my own remix on that record. It was the Deep Sleep in a Pillow of Bass. I would name remixes really funny things at the time. It was called the Deep Sleep in the Pillow of Bass mix or some shit. Like for some reason, I was just young and creative and just.
Yeah.
That's why I don't. These kids today, when they're playing, when the Martinez brothers or even other kids are playing 140 BPM, I'm like, they're just young.
Yeah,
Just having fun.
yeah.
They're
I
just having
totally
fun.
feel that as well. Yeah,
They're
yeah.
just having
Let them
fun
have
and
their
just
fun.
experimenting, like having fun, as long as it's tasteful.
Yeah.
So I remember doing that, and we that's when I kind of started to really play out. That was my first international gig was with the S-Men.
Yeah. Oh, no
It
way.
was
Okay.
it was 1997.
Mm.
Tribal Gathering, London, opening for Kraftwerk.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's like a few things to unpick there. Yeah. Well, first, yeah, international
Yeah.
UK, great. Tribal gathering, yeah, amazing. Craft work, holy shit.
Holy shit. Yeah. Holy shit. I remember that moment because I remember thinking, because I remember when we decided to do it, Roger at the time and as then manager and slash fiance or girlfriend, Karen, were like putting it together. And it's like, oh, we're going to do this tour. And, that's how that all started. And that was kind of my first initial thought of like a collective. Hey, we did this. And me and Armand were hanging out and we started talking about putting together the Mongoloids,
Yeah.
which we were like thinking about the Wu-Tang House, but
Mm-hmm.
more now that I think about it today, it's more like the native tongues, the house,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
meaning
Yeah.
like De
Yeah.
La
Yeah.
Soul,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
That's
we were really a collective that worked together and did things together, but didn't really need the credit. We just kind of did things if we were around,
yeah.
and it just happened very organically.
Yeah. And everyone's
Very
connected in that way that you wouldn't necessarily know. And because there's not one overarching umbrella, you didn't really do much together all the time, but you know that this person is connected. I love unpicking all of that.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's how that happened, and but that's kind of how where my career got started, and the misconception is, that I'm as old as my peers, but I'm the youngest. So I realize now, like Armand was like my older brother and mentor, and I was
hmm
kind of his younger brother, muse.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a muse to a lot of these guys because I was just a kid that was, they couldn't, even though they were young, Armand was in his, what, 20s and
Yeah.
maybe 30, like late 20s, 30s, and I was young. I was still a little bit more rebellious than all of them because I had an excuse. I
Yeah.
was young.
Well, and you're bringing a different
So, yeah.
perspective as well from those guys, I'm sure.
Yeah, I realize that now. I didn't think about that before
Mm.
because I thought my perspective was their perspective, or because I was hanging out with them if
Yeah.
they're letting
Yeah.
me in. But really, they're just like, okay, what's he going to do now? Like,
Yeah. Well, maybe maybe we can learn from this
yeah,
kid. You know what I mean? He's like plugged
yeah,
into stuff that we're not
and
necessarily
vice
plugged into.
versa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
yeah. I mean, So it was it's when I reflect now on it, I realize there was a lot of cross pollination of influence and respect and admiration amongst all of us, including me. I thought I was the only one that was being inspired and or being influenced, but
Hmm.
really it was all around,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Cool. I mean, and like just to unpick a little bit from there, what was
Yeah.
firstly Kraftwerk? What was that like playing for them?
Funny story. So I had at that time, I remember getting to London, watching a rehearsal. They had their stage covered in a tarp, so you couldn't
Hmm.
really see anything. And at that time, I had a little Sony Handyman, kind of like
Hmm.
a camcorder, a handheld that Armand had, and we was just for some reason it was more like having it because you look cool. But I never did anything with the tapes. I never just
That's what people do with phones these days, right? Isn't
yeah, you
it?
just look dope. You're just like this.
Yeah.
So I remember recording. Excuse me, I'll repeat myself. I remember recording and recorded the rehearsal and some stuff,
Hmm.
and then suddenly somebody comes and grabs my handyman, opens it up, takes the tape out, and then hands me the thing and just leaves. And I was mad, like
Yeah.
really pissed off.
Uh huh.
I was like, what the fuck? And I was young and more like aggressive.
Yeah.
Fuck, who took my shit?
Hmm.
Telling Roger, saying, I'm fuck somebody up. And they're like, relax, calm down, you know. And then they're like, listen, you can't record. This is crap. Like they don't allow anyone to record.
Hmm.
Anyway, I got it. Of course, respected it after I realized why it had happened.
Yeah.
Played, and at that time, for me to kind of add a different flair to what we were doing, the six turntables, and three mixers. I also brought my Roland W30 to play samples and play some keyboards.
Hmm.
So that was kind of real cool as well.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, did the show. I was like, and I remember thinking, if I don't have to do anything, if I never have another gig or whatever, if this is it, this is great.
Yeah.
Like meaning, I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm, my heart's full.
Yeah.
And I remember getting back home. I do recall getting back home and then opening up my mailbox. So I had a package in the mail,
Mm.
and I open it up, and I see a collection of Kraftwerk vinyls, limited edition, and a T-shirt, and the tape is back in
Oh
the
no
box,
way! They sent it
but it
back
was
to you.
yeah, but it was demagnetized. So I put it in, and it was all shh,
Oh
it was
no
just
way!
complete, yeah.
Oh man, they wiped it.
So
Amazing.
I was like, that's really cool.
That is
That was
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Going shit. Like they took it, they wiped it, and it said, let's give them a little gift,
Yeah.
and sent it back. And yeah, that was like the coolest shit I ever,
That is.
one of a core memory for me
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that happened. I don't
It-
know who did it, if there was an assistant, but whoever did it, thank you. I don't know if you remember, but that was fucking awesome.
Yeah, amazing. That is the German sense of humor in action right there. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Cool. And also about the Mongoloids briefly. For those that are
yeah,
listening that might not necessarily know who they were or what that was, it was like the laundry list. Like you say, it's like native tongues. The laundry list of people that were involved with it. It's obviously yourself, Armand van Helden, Sneak, Basement Jacks were in there, Daft Punk. All these kind of connections. There
yeah.
wasn't obviously like we've kind of said as well. There wasn't much like official output underneath that one name, but was there talk of a collective album at one stage of you all getting together and doing something like that, or was that really hard to kind of navigate? I'd imagine.
Uh, there was. So how it started, it was like a morning after a party.
Hmm.
It might have been that party that I met Gladys at. I'm not
Okay.
really sure, but I remember waking up at Armand's and like sitting down in his kitchen, and we were talking about collective, like the Wu Tang. That was our
Mm.
first reference
Hmm.
because I was already doing S-Men,
Yeah.
and then Sneak was coming around, hanging out, and he would come to Armand's house. We were always hanging out, and Bear Who and a bunch of other cats, and that's when the idea came across, like, hey, we should really start this like kind of like collective of like-minded individuals that are boys,
Hmm.
and we can kind of collaborate together. And Armand came up with the word Mongoloids, I think, because from the Mongolian, we had no idea of reference, like people that had
Yeah.
disabilities,
Yeah.
or like to us, it was more like warriors,
Hmm.
you know, Genghis Khan, the Mongoloid warriors. So it was that type of mentality.
Hmm.
So we had no. You got to think when we're kids, we don't really know much about the English dictionary language and what the proper what a word would stand for around the world.
Yeah.
So we're like, all right, we're the apocalypse. So 1997 comes, I think, and we're in Miami, and Armand officially made me the recruiter. Like, you
Okay.
go recruit everybody. So we're at, I think, the Maxi party, or one, or another. Now, maybe not the Maxi. No, we're at the rally. We're at the
Hmm.
rally. I think
Hmm.
we're at the rally. And Tomas and Guy wants to meet Armand and I, and he's like, because Bear knew them
Yeah.
from Chicago
Hmm.
when they visited Chicago and they met Sneak. So Sneak already knew them. And they're like, we go to the back of the rally, like, we're towards the beach. I
Hmm.
remember Pedro's there, Pedro Winter, Tomas and Guy, and that whole crew. And I go, I'm like, yo, what's up? And we're all hanging. Everyone's happy to meet each other. Like, it
Hmm.
was like a pure organic joy.
Yeah.
And I automatically like, yo, we're starting a crew called the Mongoloids. You guys are in, blah, blah, blah. And this is our secret handshake. And everyone's doing it. And everyone's like the energy is all there. And that's it. They were just in. And it was
Mm.
serious. Everyone's like, I was like, Hayak. We had this like call sign and verbiage that we all knew.
Yeah.
And it was done. They were like in. And inseparable. We all rolled together at that time. We're hanging out. We
Hmm.
went from one party to another. It was just like instant connection. And then the same thing happened with Basement Jacks.
Yeah.
Basement Jacks, and they were down. And when I go to England, I would go to Brixton and hang out in their studio. And
Hmm.
next thing you know, I'm doing vocals and this and that. It just happened. And
Yeah.
they come to New York.
Yeah.
They're in the studio with us, and it's just we all at the time were just young, fresh, respected each other musically, and just were about the concept of helping each other
Mm.
for the sake of just helping each other,
Yeah.
for the sake of just having unity,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it was a very serious thing when you look at the Burning video. We're all in that. We all flew to Chicago to be in the Burning video. I'm there with blonde hair and white eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Armand's there. Roger showed up. Like everyone was in. And then Roger became a part of it. Obviously with the S-Men and Sneak. Then you had Harry Romero come in. I got Harry in because Harry and I were Nightbreed. We had a collective together. We remixed Aaliyah together and John A. and a lot of stuff, a lot of records. So we were Nightbreed, and I got that from a moniker from Clive Barker.
Clive Barker movie, yeah.
Yeah, Nightbreed. I loved all those, that type of film. So I would borrow from different things that influenced me, and films was a really big thing, Jodorowsky and stuff. So yeah, Nightbreed was another offshoot of us, and we had all these offshoots,
Amazing.
and that's how that manifested. And we were very Raj and I remixed Revolution 909, Armand remixed the funk, everyone started kind of working with everybody. And there was a talks, and I found out about this later, where Pedro and Armand talked about a Mongoloid album. And the robots, Tomas and Guy were very serious about it, but Armand wasn't. He thought we were just kind of all doing this and not taking it as seriously as it could have been.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, we had a conversation not too long ago. He's like, man, everybody took it seriously but me. We could have done an album.
Yeah.
And it was talked about maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
A Mongoloid album, which is pretty awesome. And if I would have known that, I would have seriously made it happen.
Yeah.
Like 100% made it happen. And I think that's probably why Armand didn't tell me, because I probably would have made it happen. But what happened also at that time, you got to think about, Tomas and Guy weren't robots yet.
That was that first album.
It was early.
Really, it was
homework into that, and then Armand is yet still to do You Don't Know Me. You Don't Know Me. I was still yet to do Be With You. That was like 99.
Yeah.
Roger was still yet to do Another Chance, or even though he was already Roger, but it was, or Basement Jacks was Remedy didn't even come out yet.
Yeah.
So this is still early on, and then everyone started. Remedy happened, this
Yeah.
happened, that, and then
Yeah.
then things just started happening for everybody. Even
Mm.
though we still kept a close connection and a close friendship, everybody started to just really get busy.
Yeah.
You know,
And you
and
can't fight
and
against that.
yeah, and then it's hard to collaborate. There was no Dropbox.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was no internet. There was no. You had to be in a room. You had to
Yeah.
be in the studio together,
Yeah.
or mail each other parts and CDs, which was a hassle.
Mm.
So it was, we were literally like, Armand and I and Sneak were at Thomas's studio in France. And
Yeah.
I was in Brixton at Basement Jack Studios. Basement Jack was at a double platinum here in Hackensack in Eric Merle's studio. Like we were in
Yeah.
the rooms,
That's almost more
working.
exciting and more meaningful, like,
Yeah.
being in the rooms together. Like, yeah, as easy as it is to be like Dropbox and, doing stuff, something like this as well. It's very
Yeah.
easy, but, when you're actually in the room and you're all vibing together,
Yeah.
that's like where the
But
magic
but
happens.
being in the room is difficult because you had to be there at that moment.
Yeah.
It's literally
Uh-huh.
the moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to travel, jump on a plane.
Yeah.
You had to, it's like being there. And that's what kind of created that magic was all of us
Mm.
being in each other's spaces
Yeah.
at the times that it needed to be, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there is a collective like that anymore. I
No.
don't think people even understand what we were attempting to do
Mm-hmm.
and that what we did,
Yeah.
because it was still a collective that we all acknowledged and we all were a part of. And if you put the dots together,
Yeah.
it's like I was watching this yacht rock documentary the other night on HBO Max
Mm.
about, and then Steely Dan was the
Mm-hmm.
core of it.
Yeah.
And they were like, when you think about
Well,
Steely Dan and all
I
the
think I've watched the
musicians,
same one, yeah, and it's like, the
yeah,
player on this one was doing something on this
the
one,
play,
and yeah.
the dude from Toto
Mm-hmm.
to Michael McDonald to
Yeah.
this, and everyone was kind of working together,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's what kind of we did with the Mongoloid Collective. We were just, we were doing it, and
Yeah.
and I don't think house music has seen that unification since then.
No. And
Honestly.
I think, I think it would be sensational for something like that to happen again. I mean, if you were going to do that again tomorrow, who would you call straight away? Who would be first in your dial for that?
It's funny you say that because, I'll be honest. I had a talk with my manager not too long ago. His name is Paul Cunningham, and I think there's a possibility of if it has to be the energy of getting a bunch of younger cats today that
Yeah.
understand what the Mongoloid ethos is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that understand where we came from, and having a bunch of, an old generation and a new generation
Yeah.
kind of come together
Yeah.
and have a new collective, but understanding what that means,
Mm-hmm.
because we really why we did it was for good reasons. Like I've been collaborating with a lot of younger cats recently, and I got on 2025 is probably my year of more collaborations.
Yeah.
Like I just did something with LF System that's coming out on Black Book,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Mongoloid down. It's a crazy fun record. I'll play it for you.
Yeah.
And they would be like one of the people I would initiate into our LF System, because when you listen to those records and those disco records, they're really Mongoloid style. They're really filtered. They're sneaky. They're they got Armand essence. They have our essence.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if I would choose, there would be a lot of cool cats today
Yeah.
that I would bring in, but I would have to know them, and break bread and just
Yeah.
be. Are you down with
Yeah.
this mission?
Yeah.
This is our mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel this in your heart?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to
Yeah.
buy into that. Amazing. And, like in terms of talking about new things in 2025 and whatever, I mean, we're in 2024 at the moment while we're having this chat. I mean, in the summer this year, you released your album Song Prince, Volume 1 on Diva Dance. Just want to talk to you briefly about that as well. Like, when you're creating like an album, what's the different, how are you approaching that in the difference between a DJ set? What when you're in the studio, how are you thinking about pulling an album together?
Initially, it was going to be called. So when I first started to do the album, this was pre-pandemic, 2019. I started to do sound prints.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be called Sound Prints Volume,
Yeah.
and sound prints was going to be sounds, tracks, and ideas. Then the pandemic came. I had a couple songs laying around, full vocal songs, and I was like, "Oh man, what do I do?" And a friend of mine named Dallas Austin, who he produced like TLC and Madonna, Pink,
Mm-hmm.
Just Like a Pill, all the early TLC stuff. He had a label called Rowdy, and
Yeah.
it's pretty prolific. It's pretty. He was 15 or 16 when he did Boys to Men, Motown Philly. He
Mm-hmm.
was a kid,
Wow.
produced that record, wrote it.
Yeah. Wow.
He's a pretty prolific
Yeah.
dude. He had won. This is during the pandemic. He won. He was inducted to the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So he called me. He's like, "Hey, I'm doing an after party. You want to play? Or would you play?" I was like, "Absolutely." So we've been friends for a long time. We just didn't know. I never even know how I could work with him because he's just, to me, like one of the best songwriters.
Yeah.
Like when you take the some of the biggest songwriters in the world, including like a David Foster. I mean, that's a different level, but
Mm-hmm.
still, if you put them all there, especially in the urban world, like Jermaine Dupri or Pooh Bear, or Dallas's Drumline, the movie is based on his life story.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I played, and then I was hanging out with him and Jermaine Dupri and a bunch of other people in that party, and I was like, man, I told him, I was like, I want to come and do an album in Atlanta with you, and I want to do a song based album with you, all songs.
Mm-hmm.
You just make sure the songs are right, and I'll make sure everything else is right. He goes, say no more, done.
Yeah.
So I flew to Atlanta, and I got there. He had a couple of writers already there. One was Nas Tokyo, and another one, her name was Lauren Hashing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it begun. Like I decided to like make a album based just on songs.
Yeah.
And not like if it's a club. I just wanted to make songs. I just wanted to challenge myself. Just like just do something. And I did.
Yeah.
It took the rest of the pandemic, and I came back. The pandemic got worse, and I was stuck. And I finished mixing it in my studio, and then right before Simon changed the reins to Wes, my last Defected release before the Wes reign was "Hit It" with Nez.
Mm-hmm.
A track called "Hit It."
Yeah.
And I sent my album to Wes. I said, I've been sitting on this. Take a listen. Tell me if you like it.
Mm-hmm.
And he heard it and was like, I think this is brilliant. Would you mind it being on D4 Dance?
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't mind it at all. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome if that's where it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, to me, I don't really think about fitting places, but today we live in this whole marketing world.
Yeah. It's got to get into a box. Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up where Little Lewis did Blackout,
Mm-hmm.
and he also did I Called You, and he also did Club Lonely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally different records, but still Little Lewis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Armand did You Don't Know Me, and he did, The Witch Doctor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or Flowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just grew up making records and not just one dimensional,
Yeah.
If I woke up today and want to make a techno record, which I did, and I put it out on Planet E,
Mm-hmm.
I'll call Craig didn't go, hey, can you change your name so this could be a more of a techno record?
Yeah.
No, just this is how I felt. I'm expressing myself.
Yeah.
I think when you do things tastefully and right, and it's good. You don't cook the same dish every day,
No.
right?
No.
And you get better by experimenting and doing different things. And if I wanted to make a drum and bass record tomorrow, I will do it in the best way with my capability, but it's going to be in my sound print. It's going to be my ethos, my DNA. I'm not trying to be Mickey Finn, or I'm not trying to be Goldie. I'm just trying to do something that's influenced by something in my way.
Yeah.
But it's not, I think putting people in a box is so archaic.
Well, it's limiting as well, and like you don't, and for you as well, or a creative artist, you don't want to be like, well, I just make house music, so that's what I've got to make, and I've got to stay in that lane. It's like, actually, I'm feeling creative no matter what. And you get inspiration from all different places. I mean, you're just talking about, Clive Barker horror movies, like giving you inspiration and things like that. It's like, this is where
Totally.
you've got to draw from as an artist. It's not just music, things that drive inspiration.
100%. The world's our oyster of inspiration, and
Hmm.
we have to take it and regurgitate it. I can understand if I wanted it to be a different artist and I wanted to like do something so off the cuff. But if I wake up in the morning, I'm making an instrumental, and I decided not to sample and play everything, that doesn't mean I have to has to be another moniker.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't. Uh, you know, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when Kashmir did Brighter Days, and then he did his Underground Goodies mix. It wasn't like he called it a different moniker because the mixes were different.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Completely.
so
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I stand when it comes to like being eclectic. And I think the more you're eclectic, the more you're open to different things, the better. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely, totally. And we are talking about being eclectic. It's a great segue into our House Culture Perfect playlist now to talk about our playlist on Spotify, which all of our podcast guests have submitted tracks to across 5 different themes. This is going to be episode 79. So yeah, it's a big old list now on Spotify. I think I looked at it the other day. It's nearly 2 days long. I think nearly 48
wow,
hours or something. So
congratulations, man,
yeah,
that's
thank
awesome.
you. And so yeah, literally, it's just fans and our guests just stick it on, put it on shuffle. There's always something amazing and eclectic that comes out from it. Um, and we're going to talk about your choices now. The 5 themes are always, we always start off with a catalyst track that first got you into dance music. You did already briefly mention it earlier, which was Tyree Cooper, Acid Crash. And when you sent me the email about it, you described it as is so dynamic with sounds from the crashes and the drums and things like that. I mean, what was your experience the first time you heard that, and why did you think of that?
What the hell is this? What is going on? And then you're learning there's a acid crash, video clash by Little Lewis, and all these clashes. It was like
Hmm.
everyone was clashing and everyone was doing the sound of the 909 and 808.
Hmm.
I just thought it was the most chaotic, the most beautiful, chaotic music I ever heard.
Yeah.
Because as aggressive as it sounded, it's as beautiful as it was.
Hmm.
And I just was like, what is this? And this is like the best shit I ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, a floor filler. I'm so happy you've chosen this because actually, surprisingly, no one has ever chosen this before, and I love this track so much. Music Sounds Better with You by Stardust. Obviously,
oh yeah,
the French touch connection. You said it
yes,
transcends the underground. For me, my experience with this was that classic Ibiza summer in 1998, where you'd heard about this tune called Stardust, ripping it up at the Winter Music Conference, and maybe you'd heard it a couple of times on the radio, and then in Ibiza, like you're almost trying to find the DJ that had a copy of it so you could hear it. It was
yeah.
insane.
I had a numbered copy. I remember. I don't know what
Hmm.
number it was, but it was with a golden marker that Pedro gave me or Tomas gave me.
Hmm.
That and Together, but I think that was his first. Oh
Hmm.
no, Together. I can't remember. But that record transcends. I love records that transcend the underground,
Yeah.
but do it with such class that it stays underground. Even
Yeah.
though that record is a commercial record, I
Hmm.
mean, it is as big as We Are the World, technically, or like you know, Bob Geldof, Band Aid,
Yeah.
Live Aid. It's that magnitude of a record, but it's still you play that today, no matter where you play it or who you play it to, it's still Stardust,
Yeah.
and it's still as cool as it was the first time you heard it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of records that don't do that.
Mm.
Some records cheese out over time, or
Yeah.
you can't hear it anymore. And that record, no matter how old it is, no
Yeah.
matter where it's played, it's always going to be a class record, and it's
Yeah.
always going to be a record that transcends the algorithm
Yeah.
or the transcends time.
Yeah.
You know,
The key word
it's
there
just
is
is.
class as well. It's like it's
Yeah,
classy. It is, yeah, it really has like a classy sheen feeling to it. Okay, so a sunsetter, you've chosen E2 E4 by Manuel Gotching. I always mangle that guy's
yeah.
name. He's
Yeah, yeah.
passed away recently. Well, I say recently, maybe it's a couple of years ago, I think. You described this as an opus. I mean, the whole thing is just incredible.
It's
Tell us
yeah.
why you've chosen that.
It's one of those records you know where you are. I mean, I remember when I first heard it, um, it was just this sonic opus that just kind of took you on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I respected the arrangement. I respected the the peaks and valleys. And then I also was like, man, this record is long.
Yeah.
And it showed me that records can it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
be that long. And producers like him and Trevor Horn and all these producers that I admired are like fearless, and they did these sonic soundscapes, and even Art of Noise. Let's say
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
they were just kind of like let's experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember knowing the record and then hearing records like Sueño Latino and all that
Mm-hmm.
sample. I'm like, oh man, and I'm like, oh, you can take these type of records and make them into more housey records. And then the first time I understood the record was like sitting at Cafe Mambo and
Mm-hmm.
watching that sunset and
Mm-hmm.
going, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand this now even more. I
Yeah.
love this more. Now I'm in love with it even more,
Mm.
So it's a record that kind of like, if you understand like romantic electronic music or ethereal or electronic music on a level of passion and love, that's what you would hear,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And you mentioned Sueno Latino there. That for me, that was my entry point to this record. Like I loved
Um,
Sueno Latino, and then subsequently finding out that holy shit, it's sampled from this other thing, and then hearing that and being like, whoa, this is
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I love that discovery
And
that
you can go
dance
to the
music give you.
bathroom. Like you can play that record, go to the bathroom, go to the
Yeah.
booth. It doesn't matter how far the bathroom is, you come back and so it's still playing. Like awesome.
You always need one of those.
Yeah.
Okay, a tearjerker. You've chosen "Promised Land" by Joe Smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That record, that is it's almost I don't want to say political, but it's almost like a Martin Luther King speech.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's a record where if you play that record at the right time in the right moment, I don't think there's going to be a dried eye in if everyone doesn't cry, one person will. Like
Yeah.
somebody will be touched
Yeah.
because it's inspirational
Yeah.
and it's touching
Mm-hmm.
and you're dancing, you're having fun, but it's pulling on your heartstrings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we all want to feel free. We all want to have this joy. We all want to have peace.
Yeah.
We all want to have and no matter what generation you're in, there's always turmoil. There's
Yeah.
always some shit going on in the world. Like what's happening now is not new.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the only thing new about this is technology and the algorithm. Everything else is the same. So if this is a matrix and we're living in some sort of like simulation, the simulations happen over and over and over and over and over again. And these are songs that almost break that matrix and make you kind of like finally as humanity in the same frequency join together and become one
Yeah.
and like reach that level of humanity where nothing matters, race, color, creed, sex, gender,
Mm-hmm.
all that shit doesn't matter, and we're actually just humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that record kind of like encompasses that for me.
Yeah.
It's like a human to human house record.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the rallying cry for that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you say, I've been to so many dance floors, and I've been that one person on a dance floor that shed that tear, and like sometimes everyone's crying. It's it's one of those
Yeah.
ones. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And we
great.
need that. We need
Absolutely,
that.
yeah. Okay, a last tune. You've chosen "One More Time" by Daft Punk. You said it never fails, and it never
It
will.
doesn't. It never will. I mean, shit. And I said this, I'll say it now here on this podcast. I realized watching that Yacht Rock documentary that Tomas and Guy, Daft Punk, were our Steely Dan of dance music.
Yes, yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%. We all wanted to sound like them. We all wanted to figure out how they sounded. So, and like, this why I asked it, because the people are like, oh, again? Yes, again, it is Daft Punk. And I remember when Armand and I first heard Homework, we're like, fuck, how did they do that?
Yeah.
Like, and we went to Tomas's studio in Paris and seeing all the gear on the floor and the compressor. Like, this is how y'all did that? Like, this shit, like this.
Yeah.
And I realized, watching that documentary that, yeah, Daft Punk are the Steely Dan of dance music, and we all wanted to sound like them. And yes, and one more time, we'll be that record for sure,
Yeah.
forever.
Mm-hmm.
And we will never stop playing any of their catalog for the rest of our lives into the future. I think Tesla robots will be playing these records.
They'll be making Tesla robots that look like the robots. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it's just honesty, because what do we have? And I'm not saying that at that time is better than today, but there was so much taste and class growing up when we did, or the music. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen today. There is a lot going on, man. There's
Mm.
Daphne. There's a lot of cool records happening,
Mm-hmm.
But taste, I think, is a little bit out the window today, and also creativity,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit taking chances, and it's I don't see that as much today.
Yeah.
And definitely the word taste is gone, because that's almost like I'm trying to find it, because we wouldn't play Jennifer Lopez records in the 90s, or Barbie girls, or any, now I hear these type of songs, whether they're remixed or not, they
Mm-hmm.
make no difference. They're
Yeah.
you like remixing Waiting for Tonight doesn't make Waiting for Tonight better
No. No.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it was bad. It was a bad song when it came out, and bad is a matter of opinion. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, like, it's like the Macarena. You can remix a Macarena, it doesn't make it underground and cool.
No. No.
So I leave that here, because I think after post pandemic, mediocre is great and things are changed, and I don't know what's going on in this matrix, but it kind of shit is definitely
It's
upside down.
yeah.
I don't know what Marvel universe we winded up in, but it's not Earth
No,
616.
yeah, totally, yeah. It's like something switched, yeah, something has changed.
Something
Yeah.
happened, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But
Amazing, cool. I mean, well, that was the last tune, but we always end with a final question, a last question, which is
yeah,
obviously this is the House Culture podcast, and we are House Culture, and the kind of what we stand for is all around. It's not just about the music; it's about the personalities in the scene, the stars, the art, the fashion, the vibe, the locations, the venues and things like that, and just making sure that we're there as a place where people can like dig in and go back to those stories that really put house music on the map first initially. I mean, when you think of house as a house music scene as like a culture, a movement, what are the main things that kind of make it up for you? What are the main themes?
passion, love, struggle, because house music comes from struggle,
Yeah.
comes from the streets, it comes
Yeah.
from the concrete jungle.
Mm-hmm.
It's house music is disco's revenge.
Yeah.
Creativity, um, thinking outside the box, dancing, graffiti, the same stuff that ignited hip hop is the same stuff that ignites house music.
Mm-hmm.
Authenticity, originality, creativity, all this is, to me, it's encompassed in house culture.
Yeah.
Vocalists,
Mm-hmm.
artists, writers, composers, musicians, drum machines, and 808s and 909s, and DX7s, and all these things encompass house music to me.
Mm-hmm.
303,
Yeah.
Roland,
Mm-hmm.
Yamahas,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a culture. It's like you have house, and even techno is in there, because
Mm-hmm.
when you talk to people like Carl Craig, and I would have never thought in my wildest dreams he would, Carl would have wound up being one of my closest friends, and I would be releasing records on Planet A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talk about taste. He doesn't just put out records,
Mm.
he hand selects and curates records.
Yeah.
But house music and techno are hand in hand. when you listen to Kevin Saunderson and Inner City and KMS and all the early stuff, it's all soulful.
Mm-hmm.
Techno
Totally.
is soul.
Mm-hmm.
It has heart, and you can't spell art or heart without art in it, and it has heart,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that kind of like what how house culture encompasses, like just everything that is passionate about what you love about house music. It's not a genre. It's not a thing you do. It's a thing
Mm-hmm.
you live. It's you do it because you live it. You live house music. You don't do house music. You live and breathe house music. You know, and that's a misconception today. A lot of people are doing this because they think they do it for the gram or the
Yeah.
IG or
Mm-hmm.
the algorithm, or it's this or content, or I'm making look how fast I make a tech house record and how fast I can be this.
Yeah.
You got to live it, man. You know, and maybe that's old way of thinking, but shit, I ain't that old. I still, I'm still I'm older, but I still have I'm young old. I
Mm.
got this whole new. I'm in a new old genre called young old, and I still believe that we we have to purvey our culture with passion
Yeah.
and love for
Yeah.
our craft, and
Yeah.
our craft is house music.
I mean, I think you've summed that all up. I'm so excited to see what you're going to be looking at and working on in 2025 as well.
Me too. I'll send you some snippets of
Send me
some
some
goodies
stuff.
before. Send you some stuff for sure, man.
Cool.
I was gonna say I love that wallpaper behind you, like that
Oh
whole
yeah,
like
thank you.
Warhol-ish.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
you can't lick it though. It's I'll get asked if it's like Willy Wonka, but no,
Well,
it's
yeah.
all real. It's all there. But no, well, no, let's
I
wrap it
love it.
up there. Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you. I had a blast. It was super awesome.